Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. You don't notice it at first. It hides behind promotions, applause, and the quiet thrill of being admired. You're moving fast, achieving more, being praised. From the outside, it looks like you're winning, but deep down, something's slipping. Not loudly, not all at once. Just a subtle crack in the mirror. The version of yourself you used to recognize begins to blur, and no one warns you that success, the kind everyone celebrates, can quietly strip you of who you are. But here's the truth. Most people aren't chasing success. They're running from insignificance. You weren't taught to ask who you are. You were trained to perform, told what to want. And somewhere along the way, the hustle became your identity, not your purpose. Not your soul, just the grind. And now, even when you achieve what you aimed for, the satisfaction fades faster than you expected. You smile, you nod, you thank them. But something inside you is silent, and that silence is louder than ever. So ask yourself this: why does success feel so empty once you get it? Why do you keep reaching new heights, but still feel like something's missing? Why do you lie in bed at night wondering if any of this truly matters? The answer isn't complicated, it's just painful. Because somewhere along the line, you traded your essence for approval. You swapped truth for validation, and no one told you what that really costs. You see, the world rewards you for fitting in, not for being real. It claps when you conform, not when you question. And so you learn to betray yourself, slowly, politely, invisibly. You say yes when you mean no. You smile when you're tired. You agree to things that hollow you out. You're not failing, you're just far from yourself. And Carl Jung saw this long before any of us had language for it. To him, success without inner alignment wasn't success. It was fragmentation. He didn't write about winning the world. He wrote about not losing your soul while trying. Because when you climb a ladder that's not yours, the view from the top won't mean a thing. And that's the trap. You're praised for becoming someone that deep down you no longer recognize. You're admired for a version of you that's been edited to please, to perform, to survive. And the applause becomes addictive. But the silence inside you, it never applauds. It waits, patiently, for you to come home. The job title, the house, the curated smile on social media, it all becomes a performance. And everyone applauds, but when you lie in bed at night, stripped of roles and applause, there's no script left. Only silence, emptiness. That quiet ache isn't failure. It's your soul knocking, begging to be seen beyond the presentation. So let me ask you one last thing. What's the point of building a life that looks good if it never feels right? You learn to play the part. Not because you're fake, but because survival often demands a mask. You know how to act confident when you're unsure, how to be agreeable when you're angry, how to look put together even when you're falling apart inside. And after years of doing this, something strange happens. You forget where the act ends and you begin. You've calibrated every gesture to be acceptable. You've edited your emotions for professionalism. You've curated your words to avoid being too much. And the world loves you for it. It calls you strong, mature, reliable. But deep inside, you start to feel like a ghost in your own life. This is what Carl Jung called identification with the persona, when the mask you wear becomes the face you believe is yours. You start young, smiling to get approval, staying quiet to avoid conflict. Eventually, the mask hardens. What began as a survival tool becomes identity. And the tragedy? You think it's you. You forget that behind the performance, there's still a voice waiting to speak. But it's been silenced for so long, it doesn't know how to return without trembling. But here's the danger.
A persona can't feel.
A persona doesn't dream.
It only performs.
And the more you wear it, the more your real self gets buried. Until you start forgetting what it even feels like to be honest, raw, spontaneous. The persona seeks applause, not truth. It survives on being acceptable, not honest. And every time you smile when you're breaking, every time you say yes when you mean no, the mask tightens. One day you realize you've been an actor in your own life. The spontaneity dies. Your laughter becomes calculated. Even your dreams start conforming to what's allowed, not what's real. You laugh when you're supposed to. You nod, you respond, you engage, but the entire time there's a whisper under the surface. This isn't me. Have you ever been surrounded by people and still felt completely alone?
That's not loneliness. That's invisibility.
Because they're not with you. They're with your persona. There's nothing more suffocating than being seen, but not known. You can be surrounded by people who praise your image, your work, your charm, but none of them truly touch you. Because they're not talking to your soul. They're talking to the mask, and every interaction that ignores your truth deepens the ache of being unseen. And eventually, you stop even trying to show the real you because you assume no one wants to meet that version anyway. You become hyper-aware of expectations, hyper-focused on keeping things smooth, safe, digestible. But something cracks. Maybe it's the way your energy collapses after social events. Maybe it's the way silence starts to scare you, not because it's empty, but because it's honest.
Maybe it's the feeling that no one really knows you. And worse, you're not sure you do either.
You begin to notice the cost.
You can't cry freely.
Can't say what you really think. Can't even tell where your desires end and other people's expectations begin. And that's the turning point, because once you realize the life you're living is based on who you're supposed to be, not who you are, you start asking different questions. What do I actually want? Who am I when no one's watching?
Where did I start disappearing?
You become a stranger to your own reactions, laughing when you're hurting, shutting down when you should speak up. You begin to rehearse your emotions instead of feeling them. You wonder why joy feels fleeting and why silence feels heavy, even when nothing's wrong. And deep down, you suspect the worst, that maybe this is just who you are now. But it's not. It's who you had to become to survive. You learned early on that parts of you weren't welcome. Your intensity, too much. Your honesty, inconvenient. Your sadness, weakness. So you adapted. You smiled when it hurt. You played along. You made yourself smaller to fit into a world that feared your fullness. And it worked, sort of. You got accepted, you got by. But you also got lost. Because every time you edited yourself to keep the peace, a piece of you disappeared. Not all at once, but in tiny, almost invisible moments. You became a mosaic of what others expected, instead of a reflection of what you really are. And now, that mosaic is cracking. That's what this discomfort is. It's not failure, it's awakening. The tension you feel isn't proof you're off track. It's proof you're finally brushing up against what's real. And yes, that will make you question everything. The friendships that feel unspokenly performative. The job that looks good on paper but hollows you out. The dreams that were never truly yours. It's disorienting. It feels like unraveling. But what's unraveling isn't your identity.
It's your illusion.
And as terrifying as that is, it's also the beginning of freedom. If this content makes sense to you, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Thank you. Jung didn't romanticize this process. He knew that shedding the persona isn't glamorous. It's terrifying. It costs relationships, comfort, status. But you know what it gives you? yourself. The version of you that can breathe deeply again, that can laugh and mean it, that doesn't have to script every sentence or polish every flaw. The path back to that version of you isn't easy, but it's necessary. Because a mask can protect you, but it can also suffocate you. It doesn't happen overnight. You don't wake up one day and suddenly realize you've lost yourself. It's slower than that. Quieter. Like a dimmer switch turning down the light, one notch at a time. And the worst part? You get used to the dark. You stop feeling things fully. What once made you excited now just feels fine. You smile, but it doesn't reach your chest. You wake up tired, even when you've slept. You show up, but it's like you're watching your life instead of living it. That's the first sign. Numbness.
Not sadness.
Not anger. Just nothing.
And in a world that tells you to stay productive and grateful, you mistake that numbness for normal.
You confuse burnout with maturity, numbness with peace. You think feeling nothing is just what adulthood is, but numbness isn't the absence of pain. It's the buildup of ignored pain. It's your body shutting down the system so you can survive a reality that no longer fits you. You're not fine. You're frozen. Then comes the second sign. Emotional confusion. Small things trigger big reactions, or big things barely move you. You're either on edge for no clear reason or completely indifferent to moments that should matter. It's not because you're broken. It's because your real self has been pushed so far down, it doesn't know how to speak to you anymore. And then there's the silence. Not the peaceful kind. The terrifying kind, where you're finally alone, no distractions, no screens, and suddenly there's a weight in your chest. You can't explain. You feel like something's missing, but you can't name it. You try to fill it with work, with people, with goals, but nothing satisfies for long. This is your soul asking for attention, and the soul doesn't scream. It whispers in subtle ways: loss of joy, sudden fatigue, random anger, or the inability to feel anything at all. You chase new hobbies, new partners, new dopamine, but none of it satisfies because you're trying to solve a spiritual crisis with physical distractions. What's missing is you. You start questioning everything. Why am I even doing this? Do I really want this life, or did I just fall into it? But instead of sitting with these questions, you brush them off, because to face them would mean admitting that something fundamental is off track.
And here's a brutal truth.
As long as you remain functional, no one will notice your pain. Not your boss, not your friends, maybe not even your partner. They'll see the version of you that still shows up, still smiles, still performs.
But inside, the hole gets wider.
And one day, you realize you've become excellent at playing a role you never consciously chose. You say yes to things you don't care about. You get praised for achievements that don't touch you. You're living, technically, but not experiencing any of it. This isn't failure. This is disconnection. And it always leaves a trail. You're drained after being around people. You second-guess your every word. You edit yourself to avoid conflict, even when something in you is screaming to speak. You don't even remember the last time you felt deeply alive. Carl Jung warned us, the farther you drift from your true self, the louder the unconscious becomes. Not in words, but in symptoms. Anxiety, insomnia, restlessness, a gut feeling that something's off even when everything looks right. And if you don't listen, those whispers become screams. So here's the question that matters now. What if your sadness isn't depression? What if your burnout isn't just stress? What if it's your soul trying to get your attention? You haven't failed. You've just forgotten who you are. But forgetting isn't the end. It's the first invitation to remember. Here's the truth you won't find in motivational quotes. Coming back to yourself isn't glamorous. It's uncomfortable, raw, and sometimes painfully slow. But it's also the most important thing you'll ever do. Because once you realize you've been living a life that isn't fully yours, you can't unsee it. And that awareness, that quiet ache in your chest, that's your turning point. But awareness alone won't save you. You need action, not drastic, dramatic change, but consistent, honest practices that pull you back into yourself, piece by piece. Start with silence. Not guided meditations, not playlists with ocean sounds. I mean real silence, the kind where there's nothing to distract you from your own thoughts. Sit with it. No phone, no tasks. Just you. At first, it will feel unbearable. You'll fidget. You'll reach for anything to avoid being alone with your mind. But that's the point, because beneath the discomfort are the parts of you you've ignored for years. Your real thoughts, your neglected desires, your truth. Let them speak. Let them be messy. Let them interrupt the polished life you've been performing. Then, write. Not for Instagram, not to be profound. Write like no one will ever read it. Because no one will. Let it pour out. The confusion, the frustration, the questions, the memories. This is Jung's dialogue with the unconscious. And it's not some mystical process, it's just radical honesty on paper. And it works. Because the act of writing bypasses the filter, the one you use every day to sound okay. And what slips through the cracks often surprises you. Fears you didn't know you had, truths you were afraid to say out loud, dreams you quietly buried. Next, do something small but real. Say no to something, not because it's wrong, but because you don't want to. Take a walk without your phone. Cook a meal with presence instead of rushing. Talk to someone without curating your words. These aren't just habits. They're symbols. They tell your psyche, I exist. I matter. I'm listening again. You've spent years ignoring yourself. Don't expect reconnection to happen in a weekend. But every micro act of authenticity you choose, even if it scares you, is a step toward home. And here's one most people skip. Notice where you lie. Not the big lies, the tiny ones. The I'm fine when you're not. The sure, happy to help when you're exhausted. The fake laugh, the polite nod. Start catching them. Not to judge yourself, but to reclaim your voice. Because every time you abandon your truth to make others comfortable, a part of you shrinks. And the work now is expansion. Final step, practice progressive sincerity. You don't need to tell your deepest truth to everyone, but you need to tell it to someone. Start small. Be just 5% more honest than you were yesterday. That 5% matters. It's the space where you stop performing and start existing. And yes, people will notice. Some will pull away. They were attached to the version of you that kept them comfortable. Let them go. Because what's waiting on the other side of that discomfort isn't isolation, it's freedom. In the end, no one cares how many titles you held, how many followers you had, or how polished your life looked on paper. What really matters, the only thing that holds weight when the world goes quiet, is this. Can you look at yourself and feel peace? Not pride, not excitement, not adrenaline, just peace. Can you stand in front of the mirror, not the one in your bathroom, but the one inside your conscience, and say, "This is who I am, and I didn't abandon myself to get here"? Because that's real success. The kind no one claps for. The kind that doesn't get posted. The kind that makes you whole, even in silence. Carl Jung didn't chase applause. He chased integration. He knew that every time you betray your truth for external approval, you fracture your soul. And no external validation can heal what self-betrayal creates. You've been told that success means becoming someone impressive. But the deeper path, it's becoming someone authentic, even if that disappoints others. Yes, you may lose people. Yes, you may outgrow roles, careers, relationships, but what you gain is unshakable. You gain a life that feels yours. And that is a foundation no storm can break. This doesn't mean you'll never feel fear again. It means you'll stop being controlled by it. You'll make decisions from clarity, not desperation, from alignment, not obligation. Success isn't a finish line. It's not a plaque or a status or a standing ovation. It's a quiet knowing. I didn't sell myself out for a version of life that looked good but felt wrong. It's the courage to walk away from what flatters your ego but drains your spirit. It's the moment you choose honesty over performance, even if your voice shakes. It's the commitment to live in truth, not because it's easy, but because anything less would be a slow death. And here's the paradox most people miss. When you stop chasing success as the world defines it, you actually become powerful, because nothing owns you anymore. Not approval, not image, not the fear of being misunderstood. You become whole, and wholeness is magnetic. It draws people, opportunities, and peace, all aligned with who you really are. So if you're still here, listening, it means something in you is already awakening. Something in you knows the performance has gone on long enough, and now it's time to come home. Not with noise, not with drama, but with one quiet, radical decision. To stop abandoning yourself. The world will keep selling illusions. But you can choose truth. And in that truth, you'll find the only kind of success that lasts. If this message hit something real in you, subscribe to the channel and leave a like, not just to support the work, but to remind yourself that you're committed to walking this path, consciously, courageously, and fully awake. We'll keep going together. See you in the next one.